despair, the same despair that drove the inmates of Auschwitz-Birkenau, is the despair that was the wellspring of 7th October 2023. If I put you, your parents, your grandparents in a concentration camp, deprived you of food, regularly murdered you, occupied your land, air, and sea space, regularly bombarded you, and murdered your children, you'd rise up too, because that's what human beings do when placed in a concentration camp, when placed in a state of despair. And the truth is, it's a miracle that 7th October 2023 didn't happen before. It's a miracle that it didn't happen every day. Because the human condition, when pushed beyond that which any human being can, with dignity, endure, will rise up against it. We never had the chance, despite all the efforts of the Luftwaffe in this city, to break the spirit of the British people. We continued to resist, to stand alone for a time. But if we had been occupied, we called them the resistance in France. We would have been the resistance in Britain. And the Palestinian people are the resistance now in occupied Palestine. It's hard for me to say these things today of all days. The pressure is enormous. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going. We will never surrender our support for the Palestinian people under occupation and under bombardment. We have had an entire year of watching, not on our television screens, because it doesn't appear there, but on our telephones. We have had an entire year of watching not 1,200 people being killed, but 160,000 people being massacred, most of them women and children, most of them, at least 65, but maybe 75% of the dead and wounded, mutilated, amputated, scarred for life, emotionally destroyed, have been women and children. And the fact that our state narrative today cannot even spare one word for them is what makes our party and its perspective so important. Because when the House of Commons is unanimous, it's almost always unanimously wrong.
Absolutely.
And this House of Commons, this shrunken House of Commons, with the exception, I should say, of the local MP, Zara Sultana, who today, she's not a Labour MP anymore, she's suspended. Why is she suspended? For standing up for our old age pensioners who just had their cold weather payment stolen from them by a so-called Labour government. She spoke courageously in the House of Commons today and was treated with utter contempt by the so-called Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, Keir Starmer Blair, Mark II, Tony Blair, without the laughs. This grim vista of tyrannical media control, even now moving into banning people from social media, from enunciating an alternative view, a contrary perspective, is what we are standing against. And if we do not, then we are coming to the end of the period in which it was possible to describe Britain as a democracy, to describe Britain as a free country. There are many people, 5 people, have told me today, and I've been in the air most of the day, that they would have liked to come here this evening, but they were afraid to do so. They were afraid that journalists might waylay them, misrepresent their attendance as some kind of celebration of October 7, or that demonstrators might be outside and there might be trouble. That's the kind of Britain we are now living in, where if you speak up for the Palestinians, isn't this the unkindest cut of all? Those that are the victims of terrorism are called the terrorists, and the terrorists are called the victims. It is a complete inversion of reality, a complete inversion of the truth. I see some African people in the hall tonight. When I was growing up, don't tell the wife, she thinks I'm 45. When I was growing up, the Mau Mau rebellion was taking place in Kenya. I can still recall the hushed tones on television and in adult conversation around me, how the Kenyans were described as the terrorists, when they were merely trying to kick out the colonizers of their country who had held them in bondage for centuries, stolen their very sons and daughters, and trafficked them to the New World, where they could pick cotton for the colonizers there. I remember, I was very young, but I grew up in a very radical house with an Irish mother who knew all about colonialism. I remember thinking how strange it is that we, the British, and settlers who look like us, how could they be the goodies in Africa? What right did they have to rule in Africa, to exploit the people in Africa? In other words, the point I'm making is that colonialism's nothing new. Our whole country is based upon what was at various times defined, who don't see the victims that they are creating, but they are creating thousands of them in just days. The kill rate in Lebanon is higher than the kill rate in Gaza, and it shows no sign of stopping. But here I have the melancholy duty to report to you that while you have been in here, Channel 13, television news in Israel, has announced that an attack on Iran is imminent and may even now be in the air. This is important for many reasons, but the most important is that Iran has pledged that it will respond to any new attack by Israel with overwhelming force. Or to use the words of one Iranian minister, in unimaginable ways. That means that if tonight Israel attacks Iran, by the morning Iran will have attacked back. Not with 175 rockets this time. Not even by 1,750 rockets this time. But by thousands and thousands of ballistic missiles, hypersonic, unstoppable. No iron dome can possibly resist them. Which means that by tomorrow, the entire region may be in all-out war. In those circumstances, we are potentially looking at World War III. Because if Israel cannot prevail with conventional weapons, who here would bet anything at all that they will not have recourse to the hundreds of nuclear weapons which they illegally, illicitly have created and maintained? Only a fool would bet that they would somehow not have recourse to those weapons. And over the weekend, there was an ominous rumble in the Iranian desert, which could have been an earthquake, but most people believe was Iran testing its own nuclear weapon. If Israel fires nuclear weapons at Iran, and Iran fires nuclear weapons at Israel, and Israel's allies, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, all nuclear armed countries come to the aid of Israel, then Russia and China will come to the aid of Iran. And what are you going to call that except World War III? In which case, all of our talk tonight might just be OTOs. There might be no election, but let's hope that we at least get you elected as a councillor. We are desperately let down by our political class. And Keir Starmer. It's almost impossible to believe. A wet lettuce, Liz Truss, has turned out to be a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. Well, you don't believe me? Let's take just two examples. I heard Keir Starmer and his crew 100 times accusing the Tories of preparing to take the old people's warm weather payments, cold weather allowance.
Yeah, that's true.
I heard them. I saw the lips move. They were denouncing the Tories as going to rob our pensioners. But they didn't. It was Starmer and Labour that robbed our pensioners. I heard Keir Starmer hundreds of times denounce the two-child cap on child benefit as cruel beyond belief. What did the third child do to deserve poverty? She didn't choose to be the third born or the fourth born. And you're refusing to give her child benefit, which is a pittance in any case, by the way.
Indeed.
As anyone would. I have 6 children. I know how little. But the Labour Party was no sooner in the door than it announced that it was keeping the two-child cap on child benefit. And the very next day, don't think I'm exaggerating, look it up. the day after they made that announcement of the cold weather payment being withdrawn from 10.8 million people, they handed over another £600 million to the crook in Kiev, Zelensky, the dictator of the Ukraine, bringing to £13 billion the amount of your money they have given to a war in far Eastern Europe, which has nothing to do with you, except that your government is up to its neck in it for its own imperial reasons as a servant of the American empire. So you see, there's no real disconnect between the international, the national, and the local. You'll have heard already about all the local problems here. Well, that's because they say there's no money. Why is there no money? Because the national government follows policies that protect the rich at the expense of the poor. And the national government is involved in war after war after war overseas. I saw a column of tens of thousands of Lebanese refugees walking to Syria yesterday. Where do you think they're going to end up, these refugees? They're going to end up on a Reform Party political broadcast in a rubber dinghy, headed for here. They're not going to stop in Syria. I came from Ireland. Jazz came from Bangladesh, Pakistan. Yes, God love Pakistan. God save Pakistan. Actually, save it from its own army. Save it from its own corrupt, crooked government. The only Englishman here, the only red-blooded Englishman here is our Assistant Deputy General Secretary. But we are all patriotic British people. We wish for the best for the British people. We want for the best for the British people. We don't hold the British people responsible for the crimes of their rulers. We are also the victims of these same rulers. We support a united Britain. We oppose all attempts to divide us, either on fake nationalist grounds or fake racist grounds. We believe in national unity. We want to recreate our finest hour when we as a British people together, all kinds, rise up and take back control of our destiny. We supported Brexit and support it still because we believe in British independence. But we didn't want to swap the European Union for the United States of America. We didn't want to stop taking orders from von der Leyen in order to take them from Joe Biden, for God's sake, who couldn't bite his own nails. You wouldn't send him for a loaf of bread and expect him to come back with the right thing. So we believe in Britain. We believe in a better Britain. We believe in a Britain governed, run, ruled by the working people themselves. That's who we are, and that's how we ask for your support in this local government by-election on Thursday. We have a real chance here because Labour and the other so-called opposition parties are frankly an embarrassment to the political scene here in Britain. You need something new. I mentioned Einstein earlier. His definition of madness remains the best one. doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you vote Labour on Thursday, don't expect anything to change. They're not even pretending that it's going to change. In this by-election on Thursday, if Labour win it, nothing will change and nobody will notice. Nobody will have heard you at all. But if you elect a Jazz, have you any idea of the political earthquake that will be right across the West Midlands? Everyone will be talking about you. Everyone will be saying, did you see that result? In the St. Michael's ward, did you see what happened there? Don't you want that? Don't you want to make an impact? Don't you want to raise your voice in support of all these downtrodden people at home and abroad that I have been talking about this evening? So we need you, not just to vote for a Jazz yourself, but to make sure your husband, your wife, your children over 18, your next door neighbour, your workmate, the people you speak to in the supermarket, you tell them about this election.
Indeed, for listening.